I'd like to start this morning by sharing a conversion experience I had 4 years ago. It probably raised all sorts of question marks in your mind. It was November of 2018 in Toronto. Jan and I were there for a week of the Parliament of the World's Religions, which had gathered about 10,000 people. We had 500 workshops scheduled. It's a wild week, a wonderful week. And towards the end of that, the last day actually, Bill Swing was offering a workshop. The Right Reverend William Swing, for 20 years, was the Episcopal Bishop of California. And he went on to found the United Religions Initiative, and something that I hadn't known about. I'd worked with Bill for 20 years and not realized how impassioned and informed and active he was in terms of that terrible threat that faced us back then and that faces us today, the threat of nuclear weapons. I was converted that day. I woke up, if you will. I got charged. It was an amazing panel of 4 people who just really told it. And then we were invited to go to another room, those of us who wanted to actively join the cause. And I think 80 people showed up at that second session. We were converted. Up until then, I'd been a pretty respectable liberal about the whole matter. Disapprove, of course. Hiroshima was terrible. Next on the agenda, we're going to, that kind of thing. I knew almost nothing about nuclear weapons and certainly wasn't active in doing anything about them back then. The afternoon I was converted. We really need to begin the discussion with memory and honor. 9 days and 77 years ago, bombs in Hiroshima and then Nagasaki took approximately 200,000 children, women, men, wonderful people who had no expectation, no inkling that this might happen. Most of them were gone in a flash. And many of the others, some of whom survive even today, have lived with racking pain all their lives. If you ever get into the subject, look up or pay attention for the word hibakusha. Hibakusha. Hibakusha are the women who survived the radiation. There's still a group of 15 or 20 of them, and these ladies are movers and shakers. You think the women in this congregation are powerful? Well, that's a kind of effort this is, and they've made an international effort out of it. We need to honor them, to thank them, to learn from them. You can't really get into this subject without surveying a couple of big problems. Actually, I have 6 listed, and I'll get through them as fast as I can because I don't want to dwell on the darkness. But we do need to acknowledge today 9 nations, 9 out of over 180, 9 nations have nuclear weapons in their arsenal. You need to know who they are. It's the USA, the United Kingdom, China, Russia, Israel, France, India, North Korea, and Pakistan. And as long as we name them, the ones who are still doing this stuff, we should hold up and honor the 4 countries which have said, we'll play by this rules, we're getting rid of ours. And they did. Belarus, Kazakhstan, South Africa, and here's the one, Ukraine. All had nuclear weapons that they gave up because there had been treaties signed by everybody that slowly we want to get rid of them all, and these 4 countries did it. The second thing we have to know and learn about all of this is that the bombs today are hundreds of times more powerful than what happened in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Hundreds of times more powerful. Think about it. We have a missile that carries 10 warheads. You send that one missile out and spray those across Russia, and you run into a nuclear winter that we all suffer. civilization and humankind can't suffer that size of explosion. And that's just a tiny bit of what the nations have held on to in this crazy world. Now, another irritating fact you have to talk about, because everyone does talk about, is nuclear deterrence. We got to have a big, set of arms here because they have a big one. If we each have big ones, we'll never fight. Well, that works as long as it works. Just one time it doesn't work. Vladimir Putin has his finger on the button, Then people call it MAD, mutually assured destruction. The next hard fact is accidents. We couldn't have any accidents or something this important, right? We lost over 50 nuclear weapons in the Cold War. We just don't know where they are. There was a Russian technician who saw coming across on his screen missiles from the US aimed at Russia. He thought. He was pretty sure. But he wasn't positive. So he didn't push the response button. That's why we're here today. The fifth thing is just to acknowledge that terrorists now have the capacity, we think, to put an atom bomb into a suitcase and carry it into a hotel on Times Square in New York City. It's something that security forces all over the world are afraid of. And a sixth nasty fact is the United States spends approximately $60 billion each year on keeping up our nuclear weapons. It's more than $1 billion every week. What could we do for homelessness, or what could we do for children's breakfasts with $1 billion every week? That's all the hard stuff, and I'm not going to, there's more, but you can go find that quite easily yourself. It's led many of us to the conclusion, and this has been said more than once now, a nuclear war can never be won and should never be waged. That's sort of the thing we cling to that holds us with hope. There's lots of good news, too. There are over 80 organizations just here in the U.S. that are working to turn this dour picture around. And if you take the world, there are hundreds of organizations and millions of people who are working very hard to make sure that we get rid of the things and that we all live peacefully, however we may quarrel from day to day. Back in 1988, 34 years ago, Bill Swing, the same Bill Swing that was in Toronto, called together a group of very influential, extraordinarily powerful people to look at this subject. I mean, this included George Shultz, who was the Secretary of State. This included William Perry, who's the William Perry Project on the web is the best education. It'd take you a while to get all the way through it, but it's interesting, it's fascinating, good video. Go look at it, the William Perry Project. Bill Perry was part of this initial group. Jonathan Granov, he's become a good friend as the last 4 years have gone by. He knows more about nuclear weapons in the world than probably any other person alive. He's a Sufi lawyer, a man of huge heart and care. Monica Willard, a United Church of Christ member, an interfaith activist, has done more than probably anybody else at getting the United Nations aware of what's going on, of the situation, and what we might be able to do about it. Monica Willard, a heroine. They decided, this group, this think tank, decided that they would do something different than all the other anti-nuclear organizations. They said, we got to start spiritually. We got to start ethically. I mean, everybody can be against these things, but what we want to do is to talk about our deepest values, the things we really believe in, and our spiritual inclinations, which sing for peace, is that wonderful anthem it did this morning. They wanted to be spiritually grounded. And if you go to Voices for a World Free of Nuclear Weapons, it's printed down below under the prayer. Voices for a World Free of Nuclear Weapons. You can get a raft of material and people and witness of why they feel what they're doing is important because of what they believe about their own deepest values. Bill tells the story of a friend of his, General James Mattis, who was the Secretary of Defense for some years. Mattis was in a meeting with the president and security advisors, and they talked about nuclear weapons. And as soon as the meeting was finished, Mattis got up, went down to his car, got in and drove to the National Cathedral. He went in and he found the Bethlehem Chapel, and he sat down and he prayed that somehow we can abolish nuclear weapons in the world. That's sort of where this group is coming from. And in the 4 years since Toronto, I'm happy to tell you that a lot is getting done now. We had a think tank, now we got an activist tank. And there are thousands of us who've now joined digitally, and a group of about 20, 30 people get together every month, sometimes more, to figure out how we can be activists in doing this kind of stuff. One of the first things that was done 2 years ago, a wonderful documentary was made. It changed its name. It's now called The Bomb, Yesterday, Today, and Tomorrow. If you go to YouTube, The Bomb, Yesterday, Today, and Tomorrow will tell you. One version's 30 minutes, one version's 60 minutes, and I beg you to look at the 60-minute one because it's engrossing, it's fascinating, it's interesting, and it's helpful. More recently, our team has been working very, very hard, and there were several 100,000 who said the nuclear prayer, which begins every Voices meeting, said the nuclear prayer around the world. I saw videotapes of hundreds of kids in India out in there, all lined up outside, and they were speaking this last weekend. We figured we could do it a week later as well, and that's why we rescheduled. But the prayer we're going to pray in a minute is the same prayer that is on the hearts and being spoken by hundreds of thousands of people now. We're looking for the time when that might be 1 million or then 10 million. We're really looking for all of this to grow. When I first got into this subject, back when I was starting with William Perry's project, the question that just flabbergasted me was, how can a Christian nation be the first to use nuclear weapons? I mean, how does that happen? I mean, remember that Jesus of Nazareth said, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they are the children of God." And then later in Luke we read, "And as you wish for others doing to you, do so to them." In a sermon that Bill preached back then when they were just beginning, he wrote, Jesus says to us, "What will it profit you in the end if you gain the whole world and lose your life?" And translating those words into this moment of nuclear peril, Bill said, "We might say, what does it profit the nation to have nuclear superiority over the rest of the nuclear nations if it sets up the scenario of a global thermonuclear war and the end of life on this planet?" Or to put it another way, he said, who wins the game of total extinction? Now, regardless of the tough history, the tough facts that we have to acknowledge today, there's good stuff happening. There are people like us around the world who've said, "I want to make a difference." How many of you have ever said to yourself, "I want to make the world a better place"? Yep. It tends to run among people like us, thank God. I want to make the world a better place. That's still a real opportunity in the small things and in the large things. If we were to start a Voices group here in our church, for instance, it's amazing things we could get done, I can tell you. I mean, because of us, Sonoma First Congregational rang bells on the Hiroshima Day and on Nagasaki Day for the whole neighborhood. There are lots of things that we could do. What can I do to make a better world? Yesterday we found out, I always thought that Mark Brumbaugh really liked us. And that he was special for us. But what we found during the service is that's how his grandkids love to laugh with him. And the rest of the family, the extended family, and our family, word after word after word came about how this man was dedicated to making the world a better place. So that's something a lot of us do want to try to do, and I would hope that you're interested enough to at least go look at the Voices website or Bill Riley's curriculum and start on this journey as well. It's amazing what could be done if we take on this quest. It's, as far as I can tell, an astounding opportunity. Why did we work so hard last week for a wonderful celebration of an extraordinary man? The struggle I'm calling you to this morning, the conversion I hope you'll have, is to participating in a project which will benefit the grandchildren of the grandchildren of the grandchildren of our children, and more. Billions and billions of people deserve to enjoy a day like the day we are involved with. So I would invite you to participate, to study the curriculum, to dream about the survival of your great-grandchildren and all the rest of us. Amen. Now let us, I think I left my copy up here. Now let us, if you look in your bulletin, you will find, here it is. You will find the nuclear prayer. I would invite you to say it with me this morning as we conclude this part of our service. The beginning and the end are in your hands, O Creator of the universe. And in our hands you have placed the fate of our planet. We are tested by having both creative and destructive power in our free will. Turn to you in sober fear and intoxicating hope. We ask for your guidance and to share in your imagination in our deliberation about the use of nuclear force. Help us to lift the fog of atomic darkness that hovers so pervasively over our earth, your earth, so that soon all eyes may see, magnified by your pure light. Bless all of us who wait today in your presence and who dedicate ourselves to achieve your intended peace and rightful equilibrium on earth. In the name of all that is holy and hoped. Amen. Thank you.